All right, like always, we're going to give it a couple minutes to let people flow in here. So just bear with us for a minute. Bruce, did I make you a moderator yet?
I don't think so, because I haven't had it pulled up on YouTube yet. So once it comes up, I will type in test, and then you can do that action.
And then John, you can make him a moderator too, right? You have that capability?
No, only you can, since you're the channel owner.
Okay. Okay, we got guys flowing in, so give it one more minute. Bruce, give me a test comment.
Bruce,
you got it.
Bruce is a mod. That's why he's got the little blue icon there.
Oh, so I got the wrench. All right.
Yep, you're good.
He is a moderator?
Yep.
Trader Joe's. God, that's gold. That's gold.
Oh yeah, these comment sections have been getting better and better every time.
Okay.
All right, guys, we got about 42 people in here, so I think it's a good time to go ahead and kick this. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. This is live stream number 5. We spent essentially the first 4 starting off talking about Afghanistan. We're going to switch it up a little bit tonight, although Afghanistan is definitely going to come up, I'm sure, along the way. And then Doc Larsen here in a minute will obviously also have a little statement about that to talk. But just to give everybody a little idea what our conversation tonight is going to be about, the very first part of this is going to be the China threat, the CHICOM threat that's materializing. It has been materializing for many years now. If you don't realize, the People's Republic of China is on the march, and their goal has been to become the #1 superpower of the world. I think they had a 30-year plan, and they're well ahead of schedule. And they've got their little tentacles all over the world, in South America, in Africa, in the Middle East, and obviously in the South China Sea as well. So there's no question that the Chinese threat is probably one of the biggest threats our country is facing on the foreign level right now. And I mean, to the point to where the U.S. military is gearing up for that fight. I can speak for the Marine Corps, being a Marine myself. The United States Marine Corps is completely revamping the service to gear it towards that Chinese threat. So that's what the #1 conversation today is going to be about in regards to what we're going to talk about tonight is the CHICOM threat, how big it is, and just everything CHICOM related. We got a special guest here tonight about this that I'm going to introduce here in a minute. I brought in to help us along with this. But going around the horn, introducing everybody. So #1, we got Les. Les is the owner and creator of Pegasus Tests on YouTube. Be sure to check him out and subscribe to him. But Les was a Marine back in the early 90s. He served in Desert Storm as a combat veteran of that war. He definitely brings a excellent perspective into all this. He also is essentially a subject matter expert in worldwide logistics. So moving shit from point A to point B. So definitely pleasure to have him on board here. He's also a black hat instructor at the One Shepherd Leadership Institute with me. Next gentleman we have on screen here, you should know him if you watch my channel for any amount of time. This is Bruce. Bruce is he's a armorer, a aircraft mechanic, a private security guy. I mean, just kind of the jack of all trades. But what he really brings to the table today is a civilian perspective for us, because all of us in here are former military guys. So Bruce, not going the military route and having a career in the civilian world gives us that perspective. So we're fortunate. He's kind of my right-hand man when it comes to YouTube videos, and very fortunate to have him involved in this today. Next, we got John. John is the owner of UW Gear. He also has a YouTube channel, not just the UW Gear YouTube channel, but he also has Alpha Charlie Concepts. So please, guys, check out his YouTube channel. I forgot to mention that Bruce also has a YouTube channel, Bruce at CampArmaments. Make sure you check it out. But John has UW Gear as well as Alpha Charlie Concepts. He was a National Guard soldier in the early 90s, around the time Les was serving, and he also brings in a armed prepared citizen point of view. We're very fortunate to have him in the group here. So welcome aboard tonight, John. Appreciate having you. We missed you last week. All righty. Our next guest, unfortunately, he doesn't have video tonight, but he's got audio, and that is going to be Rob. He's a lieutenant in the Navy, which, you know, if you guys served in the Army and the Marine Corps, a lieutenant is a little bit different in the Navy. A lieutenant is actually an 03, equivalent to a captain, but in the Navy, they call that a lieutenant. But Rob here was a surface warfare officer for at least 9 years. He's got a lot of insider knowledge on the PLA Navy. So we thought it would be a great idea to bring him in so that he can spin us up on some of the Chinese Navy threats and their capabilities, all within an unclassified level, obviously, but he definitely brings a lot to the table in that regards. And our last panel expert here, we got Dr. Christopher Larsen. He is the founder of the One Shepherd Leadership Institute, going strong for 40 years now. We'll be celebrating his 40th anniversary here at the end of this month with the fall semester up there. Looking forward to it. But Mr. Larsen is a accomplished author of many books on small unit leadership and just a wealth of knowledge. Very fortunate to have him. He brings a hell of a lot to the table. And with that being said, before we kick into this China brief here, I'm going to go ahead and turn over to Mr. Larsen. He's got a nice little public service announcement for us that we think is very important to share with our audience. So go ahead and kick it off, Chris.
Right. Thanks, Brent. And thanks for having me. And yeah, you know, in light of the DOD's recent announcement to the veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan, and honestly, the global war on terror, as we pulled out of Afghanistan, you know, and facing the reality that it is a strategic defeat, DOD is reaching out to those warriors who have served and those who continue to serve to say, hey, look, don't despair, that you're not alone. And I wanted to echo that. I mean, I'm going to be honest. Let's call a duck a duck. They're concerned about you know, cutting off any potential spike in suicide, self-harm, all of that sort of thing. And I think we have to recognize that we've really shared some rather emotional opinions on this subject over the last handful of episodes. And regardless of where we stand, I assure you, none of us see this as our defeat. This is very clearly the defeat of the Biden administration. And again, I know that makes it, if you disagree with that, there are certainly more variables and factors, but none of it can be blamed on the warrior. And so I want to say that America and the rest of the world does not see this as a defeat of the American serviceman and servicewoman. And so, no, don't wear that. You don't, it's not yours. That's not your burden to carry. So this is Biden's defeat, not yours. And I want to put just this one seed into your mind. Let's see what happens over the course of your lifetime. I mean that. Let's stay in the game and let's see what happens, because 20 years, you know, that runs deep. And so the real question is, were we there long enough to inspire that youngest generation? Will they in 20 or even longer years say to the Taliban, to whoever the oppressor, no, we're done with you. There's a better way. And if that turn out to be the case, then that is your quiet victory. And so don't despair. And I think that's my message. Okay.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, Chris. Appreciate you guys sharing that. Let's find the right setting here. Does that work for everybody? So anyways, yeah, I just want to piggyback off of what Chris just said. Absolutely 100%. You know, the U.S. military, when we were in Afghanistan, hooking and jabbing, we were kicking the shit out of the enemy. We lost no battles. We always won. We always defeated them. We kicked their ass to the point where they had to hide in Pakistan. And, you know, it is what it is. We pulled out and they overran. But I think Chris has a very valid point. You know, we might have been there long enough to where the Afghans on their own, after could be months, could be years, are just going to take this shit back over themselves when they realize, hey, we had it pretty damn good when the U.S. was here. And we're not going to put up with this bullshit no more. And I think what's going on in the valley up there is kind of being censored by the Taliban, I think there's still a lot of resistance left. So that might gain some steam as well. So that being said, guys, let's go ahead and kick into the China threat. So
Speaking of, did we lose Rob?
No, he's still here. Somebody's got an echo. You can mute those alternate sources. No, he's still here. His signal's pretty low. Rob, you on with us? Well, let's push forward. So anyways, rolling into this China threat, guys. I'm going to turn it over to somebody else. I've been talking for a while, so let's kick it over to Les. Les, you kick this off, man.
All right. Well, the Chinese fleet's been building. They've got 2 aircraft carriers now, and they've got a third about to hit the water. The significant part of that is the first aircraft carrier, the Liaoyang, I'm probably mispronouncing that, was the old Russian Varyag, the second in the Kuznetsov class. They got the hold of that hull. Now, the thing that's significant about it is they had a partially completed hull. It took them about 20 years to turn it into a workable aircraft carrier. They're not deploying it. It seems like they're using it as a training carrier just to learn. They deployed their second one. They built it a whole lot faster. The thing about these 2 carriers, they're what they call STOBAR, short takeoff, barrier-assisted recovery, which means the jet's own power is what launches it. It has no catapults. It depends on a ski jump on the front, but it has the traditional hook and wire system for recovering the aircraft. This gives it more capability than, say, the old British Invincible class they use down in the Falklands. It gives them more aircraft capability than the Harrier, but it's nothing that equals our Nimitz class carriers. Their third one coming online, I think it's called the Shandong. I could be wrong on that, but that's supposed to be, when it's done building, Catabar carrier, which stands for catapult-assisted takeoff, barrier landing, which means then they're going to have a carrier that's going to have the capabilities aircraft-wise of our Nimitz class, although I don't think in displacement or aircraft complement it's going to be as large or as long-ranged. Other things of their fleet, right now their submarine fleet outnumbers ours. Right now we have a qualitative edge, but as Lenin himself once says, quantity has a quality all its own. If there's more enemy submarines than we have torpedoes, doesn't matter how good ours are. The Chinese fleet does not show any signs of slowing their building strategy. And I think they recognize certain weaknesses they have, like in the aircraft carrier. They're not matching us capability for capability with carrier. They have 2 with 1 building. We have 11 with 3 more building. So I think they recognize that, and that's why they went the strategy of building the islands. It's kind of like a poor man's aircraft carrier. While it can't move, it also can't be sunk.
Sure can be flattened, though, right?
Absolutely.
Hey, Rob, are you there with us, man?
I don't see him on anywhere.
Yeah.
He might be having some connection issues.
Yeah, he's on my screen. He's jumping in and out.
Yeah, I'm seeing the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have him at all. I've just got the 5 of us.
Well, hopefully we can get him in here, because we definitely want that subject matter expert to give us a little brief on the Chinese PLA Navy. So, yeah, there's no question, man. The CHICOMs are building ships. It's way faster than us. I think their production is outproducing what we did during World War II. I mean, it's crazy how much they've geared up. But Bruce, what you got, man?
Ooh, okay. So yeah, this is going to be an area that I'm not necessarily very strong in, and leave most of it up to you big military guys. But back on the home front here, I'll just say that, stay diligent, be aware of what's going on. We don't have a whole lot to worry about. I mean those of us that are active here on the ground until boots hit the ground. And other than just voicing an opinion as to what's going on out there and monitoring what's going on, I think probably our biggest concern is with, and this was mentioned in the comments before, all of the control that China seems to have over imports, products that we're producing, software. I mean, that's a whole topic within and of itself. Every one of us here and every one of you watching are guilty of using that merchandise in one way or another, whether intentionally or simply you know that it's happening, but just through the software and the hardware of the internet that we use today. So that's something definitely to think about. And they've gained control of that, and we've honestly given them control of that very quickly. Just since this internet thing kicked off, 20 years ago, and I expect that for us to get weaned off of that is certainly everything that they produce can be produced somewhere else. But the time it would take to quit that cold turkey and spool up getting that produced somewhere else would, I don't know if we're willing to make the compromise that it would take to make that happen. I don't know if the world is willing to do it. Even if we did it, would the rest of the modern world do it also? I don't know. That's a logistical nightmare that none of us really want to see. I would hope that we start doing that slowly on our own. But I don't see any intention, any indication whatsoever that this country is moving that way at all. So I'll kind of leave it at that. And I'll say I hate to bring this in, but I'll bring it in because I think it's important. I don't understand why Beijing doesn't look like Hiroshima did in 1945, given the amount of people that they've managed to kill over this entire virus that was let loose on the world. I feel like we've given them far too much of a free pass on that. And, call me crazy or extreme if you want, but I can't imagine that we haven't pushed back on that much harder than we have, rather than coddle them as being part of the victims of that whole thing. So I'll leave it at that and let you big military guys talk about a big military response.
Rob, you in here?
Yeah, can you all hear me?
Yeah, man. Awesome.
Hello, can you? All right. Yeah. Sorry for the tech difficulties.
Yeah, brother. Can you give us a little essay on the Chinese Navy?
Which I'll try to get out. Again, vets. Hey, thanks for.
Oh.
I have a lot of friends.
I think he's got the Brent syndrome going on.
Anyways, can you all still hear me?
I think the Chinese are actively jamming him.
Hey, Rob, your signal's really weak, man. You're cutting out really bad, brother. Do you have another communication that you can log in with?
Okay. Yeah, stand by.
Yeah, if you look, there's a little signal bar at the top of your icon on the left, and it shows you what your signal is, and yours keeps dropping down into the red, man. So.
Okay, how about now?
We'll come back.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Good. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Yeah, sorry. Sorry for the tech difficulties, gents, but just want to say big fan of the channel. I appreciate what you guys do. And also to all the Afghan vets who might be listening there, hey, thanks for everything you guys did. I have some friends that left a lot of blood, sweat, and tears over there myself, a lot of classmates and shipmates. So I appreciate you guys more than you know.
Thanks,
and
brother. I appreciate you.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so just a little intro from me. I'll make this quick and dirty. Sorry if I'm boring anybody, but there's a lot of information. It's a big threat. So as far as I go, I served as for over 8 years as a surface warfare officer. That's the Navy's designation for the line officers that serve on our warships, cruisers, destroyers. I deployed to the Western Pacific and the Middle East with a carrier strike group and as a riverine officer. I'm now just a private citizen, but many of my excellent shipmates, sailors, and fellow officers still serve at sea. And honestly, I'm very worried for them and our country. Our nation's enemies are now approaching a near peer capability. I must stress that the following opinions are my own and not that of the U.S. Navy. Again, I'm a civilian now. These are simply assessments as a former junior officer. There's a wealth of knowledge on the open source from flag officers, strategic think tanks, Naval War College, etc. They say that a naval war is a building war. and that victory at sea may be determined by decisions made years before the first shots fired in anger. Last year, while we were all distracted by 2020, China quietly surpassed the U.S. in total numbers of warships, 350 of theirs to 293 of ours to be exact. The People's Liberation Army Navy, or PLAN, has been outbuilding us at a rate of 4-to-1, and they're projected to have about 425 warships by 2030. For now, the gap is not critical, as many of these ships are small missile boats and coastal craft that are of limited use against our fleet. But while America enjoys forward bases in Japan and Guam, it's still hampered by the problem of having a two-ocean navy, two-ocean defense. Additional commitments to the war on terror and NATO further stretch our resources around the globe. China's primary strategy involves anti-access aerial denial within the first island chain. So that's a line from Korea, Japan, Taiwan to Vietnam, with ever-expanding capabilities out to what they call the second island chain. So think Guam and the Marianas. They also field formidable batteries of anti-ship cruise missiles and land-based anti-ship ballistic missiles, successfully striking their first target in motion at sea this past year. The PLN has also gained logistical experience in their anti-piracy patrols as far as the Arabian Sea. Their economic colonialism in Africa also ties into their greater strategy to secure sea lines of communication to the oil fields in the Middle East and the markets of Europe. For years, China has used her Coast Guard and naval militia to bully weaker Southeast Asian neighbors in the South China Sea, coveting lucrative fishing and mineral wealth in that region. She's fortified and even built artificial islands to support her excessive territorial claims. For now, the U.S. Navy is still conducting freedom of navigation operations to basically push back against that expansion, but America's recent debacle in Afghanistan has emboldened China to the point of threatening to sail Chinese warships through or near our waters in the near future. This is not to paint the Chinese as invincible. To the contrary, China still falls behind in key warfare areas such as joint operations, anti-submarine warfare, over-the-horizon targeting, replenishment at sea, and they need to train large numbers of new sailors with no combat experience. Her economy is also slowing as her aging population will be now cared for by a generation of only children. It is my assessment that we hold the superior hand for now, but the gap is tightening. We have nearly a century of carrier strike group experience, and we operate 11 supercarriers to China's 2. Our ability to conduct long-range logistics and strike operations have been honed for 20 years of war in the Middle East. I watched with pride as our carrier launched F-18s to bomb the Islamic State. However, this experience fighting terrorist forces with little to no air defense is of limited value against a sophisticated conventional force like China. Aside from the recent coastal cruise missile attack off Yemen in 2016, the U.S. Navy has not seen real combat at sea since 1987 and not sustained fleet action against itself since 1945. Time will tell if our administration has the will to counter Beijing effectively and with foresight. Basically, China's playing the long game, and we need to learn to play the long game as well. And that was my intro. Thanks, guys.
Man.
Well done, man.
That was awesome, brother. Damn, I think.
Thanks for tuning into the show tonight.
No shit. I can't. I know I speak for the rest of the guys. We got a ton of questions to ask you, brother. I've got to know this because this is something I know everybody's curious about. We've talked about the possible invasion of Taiwan. Many of us think that that's probably how this all is going to kick off. What does the Chinese Navy look like in terms of lift? How are they going to get their land forces from mainland China to Taiwan? What, in your opinion, how's that going to happen?
All right. So again, just the opinion from a swinging dick lieutenant. All right. I was just in 03. But as far as the enemy order of battle, well, I shouldn't say enemy, but the Chinese order of battle, they do have
just fine.
significant heavy lift capability. They have the equivalent to our WASP class LHD, which is our Gator Navy flat tops. They can carry helicopters and troops. They have LCACs. They have the equivalent to the LCU, AAVs, LAVs, you name it. They additionally have smaller units that are equivalent to the LPD San Antonio class. So that's their landing ship dock as well, or excuse me, LPD. And then they have smaller landing units that are like if you've ever seen pictures of D-Day with those big ships that LSTs, they would go right up onto the beach and they had big doors that opened up and the tanks would roll out. They have those as well. Additionally, they have several brigades stationed right across the water from Taiwan on their east coast, Taiwan's west coast, across the strait. And those, basically, it's their version of the Marine Corps, the Chinese version of Brent and y'all. All right, they have, it's at core strength now. about 20,000 Marines. They're trying to expand it to as much as 100,000. So they have a lot of heavy lift. As far as their air goes, they do have helicopter capability that is attached. They have their own artillery. They have their version of light amphibious armor. I don't think they're as good as we are. I'll leave that more to the Marines to decide. You guys can read about more of that in open source, but they are building it, and they are trying to actually fold command of their amphibious army forces, not Navy forces, but army forces, under the Marine Corps umbrella. So they're actually doing organizational restructuring as well, for again, to build up at least the threat of force against Taiwan, a full invasion. As far as fixed wing, they don't really need carriers because they can just fly directly from China. It's only like 40 miles away. Imagine if America had a civil war in the 1950s, and then the guys who lost retreated to Cuba and are still heavily armed in Cuba. That's basically the situation in China and Taiwan. Okay, each side believes they're the true heirs to the Chinese seat of power. One is democratic, and one is communist. So as far as capability, they definitely have it. They also have massive amounts of missiles aimed at Taiwan. As I said, they have a lot of medium range and short range ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. Their ships are heavily armed with those missiles, and it wouldn't just be an unopposed landing. They would have forces on the other side, the eastern side of Taiwan, getting ready for American contingencies. Again, in my opinion, not the opinion of the U.S. Navy, just mine. So you're going to look at, it would be pretty hairy. They have a lot of local hardware, and as far as the unclassed level, I'll leave it at that.
Go ahead, Doc.
Yeah, all right. So I'm partly out of, someone needs to play devil's advocate, and also because when you ask me, I'm more of a fence sitter on this one, but I lean towards China's not looking for a war at all. And so that's the part I'm going to play tonight. That said, before I get into that and put my devil's advocate hat on, let me point out, to back Rob up, not only are we all looking at Taiwan, but I'll remind you that for decades, we all thought the tripwire was going to be North Korea, right? And more recently, in the 1950s, we saw the Koreas, we saw China invade Tibet. And then more recently, we're seeing border wars with India. So wherever the tripwire is, right, and it might be multiple, wherever that tripwire is, I will say this. For me, the strongest argument that we are going to war with China and that we are going to would be this. The time is now. In 5 years from now, China might be a little better, but America can recover in as little as 5 to 10 years. You look at the debacle of Vietnam and how poor our readiness was in the last half of the 1970s, but look at how quickly we recovered in the very, very early by 81, we were a different army. We were a different military. America can recover lightning fast. We're talking 5, 6, 7 years, all right? So we can recover better than they can build. Let's just talk about where America is right now. We lost in Iraq. We lost in Afghanistan. The United States government or the United States people are exhausted because of 20 years of war, and they don't want another war, not a small one, not a medium one, not a big one, okay? So we're just exhausted. And if I was China, I'd be saying, wow, now is better than in 5 or 10 years from now. Now is the time. Here's how ready the United States military is. Here's how ready they are. They just released a public service announcement and another campaign saying, please, 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 suicide prevention. And I'm not making fun of that. I'm like, yeah. Now, I'm not making fun of it, but I am pointing that out as that's their readiness campaign. They are absolutely plagued with suicide prevention, rape prevention, and it doesn't matter whether the rape count is being blown out by the media or not. Fact is, perception is reality, and so regardless of whether it's true or not, that is China's information on the American military, is that they're rapists that are all killing themselves. Oh, and by the way, what's our number one priority in the United States military? Seriously, the number one priority in training and readiness is diversity. That's inclusion. So we're going to sing Kumbaya. is just in effect become. This is, I'm being hyperbolic. I'm being inflammatory. But you guys know what I'm saying. I think most guys would expect me to get on here and say, look, we haven't done big army fight in 20 years. We haven't done combined arms, big army fighting a near peer military, or imagine that in 20 years. Rob's talking about how the Navy hasn't been in a big fight since, 87, right? And the Gulf War, we might give them that and say 91. The point is, it's been forever since we've had this kind of a fight, and we have not trained up to it. But forget that argument. Forget it. We're on the heels of a strategic defeat. Our people don't want any more military incursions and fights. And our military, come on, it's diversity and inclusion. It's to make us strong because we believe rainbows are strong. The time to attack is now, right now. And so while I'm going to argue the rest of the evening that China isn't going to attack, not now and not in 5 years or 20 years, they're not. I will say that if you're clever in China and say, no, this is coming, then do it now. For God's sakes, China, this is the time.
Hard to argue your points there, Doc. I would say one of the challenges that the Chinese would have in Taiwan is, if my memory of the geography is correct, actual landing beaches on Taiwan are limited, and that's one of the main reasons Nimitz decided to bypass any invasion of Formosa, Taiwan, during the Second World War, because of the limited landing opportunities. Another thing I would like to say, and Rob can put in some comment about this, if you're looking for information on current naval activities, you need to be reading this, which is the U.S. Naval Institute Proceedings. That seems to be the most update information that I find out on the PLAN. And another thing to understand, the geopolitical situation is a little dated, but if you can find it, copy of 7th Fleet. It's more based around the early 2000s. It's a tabletop war game, but it does go into the capabilities of every Navy, U.S., Japanese, Soviet, Chinese, and one of the big things that factors in the gameplay is logistics. And also it teaches you the lesson of numbers, because in the game, the Chinese have tons of submarines. Now, they're almost practically not better than a World War II U-boat, but there's so many of them that a lot of times the player playing the Chinese can drive off multiple U.S. carrier battle groups just because there's more submarines than they can kill.
Hey, I appreciate that, man. And you're absolutely right. I'll try to answer what I can. The invasion beaches on Taiwan are limited. I've heard something as low as 10%. So they'll have to choose their places wisely. Obviously, those are choke points that as far as the tactical situation goes. And going back to what Doc said about the state of the force, as far as the Navy goes, you're absolutely right. We do have a lot of training that takes us away from warfighter training. And that definitely pissed me off. It pissed a lot of my compatriots off, especially when I went down to the Riverine units, because we were more of like mine there as far as the warrior spirit. That being said, there's still plenty of bravery with the young men and women who serve in uniform on the ships, okay? The Bonhomme Richard was set on fire by an arsonist. That whole ship was on fire World War II style for days. And there were 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds marching in step in platoon formation, basically into that fire. They take their shift, they come out, they get some water, they refill their air bottle, and they go back in. And I never heard of anyone complain. In fact, I just heard of the entire waterfront trying to help. When I was boarding ships as a younger officer, my first boarding, I couldn't physically fit through the door of one of the dowels we were boarding because it's like a tall house door. So one of my smaller sailors had to clear that danger area. And he said, hey, LT, I can't even fit in there myself, but if you don't mind, I'm going to take off my body armor and I'm going to clear it out with a pistol. Are you cool with that? I said, as long as you are, and he did it. So there's little quiet pieces of bravery that happen every day. And I do believe that if we are called to fight, most of us, men and women are going to stand up and do it. But, bravery only goes as far as your platforms, honestly. A naval war, like I said, is a building war. And we need to have the force structure to counter the threat and make sure that the Chinese have the correct calculus. Going back to the whole Taiwan thing, I kind of agree. Honestly, if I was China, I wouldn't necessarily go kinetic now. I would just continue to do hybrid war like what Putin does. try to interfere with their elections, cyber attacks on Taiwan, degrade their morale, their faith in their government, their faith in the elections, do a lot of misinformation stuff on their Twitter. Does any of this sound familiar, guys? So basically, I would degrade the morale of the Taiwan people and make them see what happened to Hong Kong and how we basically couldn't do anything or didn't do anything, and continue to build up a very capable Chinese Marine Corps and Chinese naval landing force. Those two things together might do two things in Taiwan. One, it might make them more hardcore and more willing to kind of go their own way and stay kind of like a Gibraltar of the East. Or conversely, they could just throw in the towel and be like, you know what, there's no point. The Americans left Afghanistan, they left the rest of their allies, they're not going to come and help us. That's the big question. And that's why I use the word debacle in Afghanistan. It wasn't just about staying or going or leaving a residual force. You know, everybody has their own political opinions about that, but I'm talking about the realpolitik. We have to make sure that our allies have faith in us. And if not, we're not going to be able to stand up to the Chinese. That's just my opinion.
And that was, Rob, that was exactly what the defense minister, or I'm sorry, he's the propaganda defense minister in China did in, you know, in America's last few hours in Afghanistan, was to turn directly to Taiwan and say, look, the Americans aren't going to help you. They're not. They don't have the staying power. They don't have the ability to defeat sandaled Taliban, although they defeated them always. And, you know, they never made any ifs, ands, or buts about it. They're like, look, the Americans win every battle they're in. But the question is, how many battles are they willing to get into? And the answer is not enough to help you, Taiwan. That's exactly their message in our last few hours in Afghanistan, was China's message to Taiwan.
Yeah. And it goes back to our last live stream where I made the comment about the Koreans when I was over there in 2014 about their building up their Navy. You know, the guy straight up told me, he goes, we're not sure you're coming.
Yeah, let me I want John to get in here too, because I know he's got a lot to say about this, I'm sure. But both Doc and Rob both touched on this. I think that I'll say this: I think we got the greatest military in the world, and I think we got the bravest military in the world. I don't question our servicemen, not one bit, not ever. I know that they will do whatever job that they're given, and that they will do it no matter what it takes, up into including death. And I don't doubt that, and I've never doubted that in my whole life, and I don't doubt that now. I don't think that that's our weakness. You know, we can sit here and we can talk war games, and we can talk about the strengths of our ships versus their ships or whatever. I have no doubt we'll come out on top of that just based on pure willpower of our military personnel. Where I believe our weakness is, and again, this is where you guys touched on that, is with the American people, with our form of government. I mean, I love our form of government, don't get me wrong, but unfortunately where we are, if people in this country are tired of war, or they're tired of seeing they're funding war, they're tired of talking about war, or whatever it may be, that window for fighting and allowing our dogs of war to be unleashed on the enemy to do what they do well, which is create really, really, really bad things within that enemy country. If that window is shortened, then all the enemy has to do is sit back and outwait that window. That's what the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese did, and that's exactly what the Taliban has done, and ISIS, and whatever label you want to put on those people over there in the Middle East that would love to do us harm and do not agree with our way of life and our form of government. They don't have to go fight our great military might head to head. They can just sit back. And I think that window every decade gets shorter and shorter. If you look at the amount of casualties that we took in the Civil War versus World War II, World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and now in Iraq, Afghanistan, I put those two together because the overall casualties are so small. All it takes is for the American people to say, okay, we've seen enough. We're going to vote for whatever candidate that is running on a platform to end this war and bring peace, because we're more focused on something else than defending our liberties and our way of life. And then our envelope to unleash that great military that we have. It is over. It doesn't matter how big and awesome that military is or what our capabilities are. It's over. So I would be interested in hearing John's thoughts on that, and also Rob, because I think he touched on it. But Rob, you being a big military guy and understand the capabilities of the military, how do you feel about the system of government that we've got in place, to where those of us civilians that don't know anything about warfighting are controlling your great military and its great capabilities to defend our enemies?
No, I appreciate you, Bruce. As far as my opinion goes, I'm a big constitutionalist. I really believe in civilian control of the military, even though sometimes that means our policy is rather two-sided or schizophrenic. I mean, it is what it is. If we have a one-party state, we'd be like Argentina with the junta. Honestly, we'd be like China. They have a single party. And I don't want to be China. I want to live in a free country. And I want the civilians in charge of the military. That being said, we need to hold the civilian leadership more accountable. When things happen on debacle level, on the debacle levels, disaster level stage, we need to hold these people accountable with free and fair elections, and they need to be voted out, because that's the only thing these people care about, these politicians. They fear not having a job because a lot of them haven't even held real jobs, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So honestly, it is what it is. Have I been tempted by the thought of, if only I was king for a day? But you know what? I don't believe in the concept of a king. Honestly, a king or a queen. I don't believe in it. We have to be a democracy. We have to learn how to play the long game. And I'll leave you with this, so I'm not flapping my gums for the whole live stream. But we may have lost Vietnam, but we still won the Cold War. And we won the Cold War with different administrations, Republican and Democrat. And we definitely shot ourselves in the foot multiple times, and we definitely funded people that ended up fighting us later. But you know what? We still defeated the Russians. And in my father's Navy, believe me, when I used to talk about my dad when he was sailing around during the Cold War, the Russians were scary as fuck as well. They were just as scary as the Chinese. And if we can take care of them, we can also be strong and stand up to the Chinese. Because guess what? The rest of the world looks at what China does with the Uyghurs, with Hong Kong. They understand that the Chinese being on top of the world and being in charge of the global trade system, that sucks for the rest of us. Good for China. Not even really good for China, just good for their corrupt government. And, I actually know a bunch of Chinese people back from my college days or whatever, students, whatever. I've traveled around there. A lot of them are not bad people, but all of them basically tell me, yeah, our government's completely corrupt and we have no power. So think about a global system with them in charge. So I don't think we need to, kind of sit on our hands and be boohoo, because you know what? If I have kids one day and he or she goes on to serve, I want them to be able to serve in a well-equipped and motivated military, and have a good country behind them.
Great points, Rob.
Mm-hmm.
What you got, John?
Oh, I'm just taking in all the stuff from the smart people.
Surely you got some thoughts here.
So, a couple of angles. I mean, I'm as much a flag waving guy as the next. I fully believe in our military's capability. But I've got two current concerns about the military. Number one is not the rank and file guy, right? It's the leadership, the upper leadership. I've got really bad concerns about that, just from things that I've heard from folks that have recently got out and what they've been saying. I'm also concerned about what it appears certain elements are trying to do to the military. And while right now I've got full faith in the rank and file guys that if you say, hey, we need to go take that, they'll go do it. You turn them loose. I feel like there's this really strong push to change that so that they're not that kind of military, if that makes sense. There seems to be this strong push to just make it a touchy, feel good, everybody just be happy Boy Scout organization. And not even that, because less than that even, if that makes sense what I'm saying. I don't think that's where they're at yet, but I feel like there's this push to get there. And what scares me is if people in power have their way and get us there, and severely degrade our military capability. Again, going back, the bigger thing that concerns me right now is the leadership, and both civilian and military. As far as China themselves, you know, I'm one of those guys that's always watched very carefully when it comes to China. I don't like to overestimate them, but at the same time, I'm a really big proponent of not underestimating them, because regardless of how good we are, if it came to a fight, they've got to say so in the fight too. And if they're more willing to, let's say, for example, sustain casualties than we are, doesn't matter how good you are. They just out-sustain you. I think the Russians kind of taught the Germans that in World War II. China's just this weird thing for me to try to really put a finger on, because, you know, some of the points Doc's made, the stuff that Rob said, the stuff that Les said, Bruce, I mean, everybody's got valid points, so it's kind of like you're just all over the board with them, and they're one that's just hard for me to put a finger on. I do know I'm not one that's, oh my God, China's just going to show up tomorrow. But at the same time, people that want to try to go around and thump their chest and repeat all the, you know, stereotypical stuff that, oh, China never set foot here, no way they could. Yeah, don't underestimate that. Yes, they might not be able to freaking drop, you know, 10 brigades of paratroopers and make beach landings all over the West Coast. But if they got invited here, they wouldn't have to. I mean, that makes sense where I'm going with that?
Yeah.
I'm tracking on you, brother.
Absolutely.
Well, and to piggyback on that point that you just made, you know, remember, you hear all these cats that are praying for civil war and stuff, and who do you think the left is going to go to for help if that were to happen? So, you know,
Exactly.
people really need to open their minds when they start speaking Civil War nonsense, because that shit ain't going to be pretty. Hey, Rob,
A lot of people don't even know that China has already quietly made offers to the state of California that if they wanted to break away from America, they would support them. Now, why do you think that is? Gee, I don't know. Maybe because California holds a freaking long chunk of coastline with a lot of big naval ports and airports, etc. Why wouldn't they?
If I might piggyback a little bit, at one point, 1 out of every 10 houses in Southern California were bought in cash with Chinese money, mainland Chinese money. All right, and that's just a little bit. They also have, I think it's like the 1,000 Talons initiative. They also have students that are basically deep cover. All right, people who come over here and have lives, families. They go to school, they get degrees over here, etc. And I'm not trying to stoke any kind of like Asian or racial hate, whatever, but I'm just saying they're sophisticated people. All right. That being said, I definitely agree with Brent. Like all this Civil War talk, I mean, you know what? I definitely have strong opinions about politics and whatever, but I guarantee you that the people in Beijing would be jumping up and down if we started shooting each other. And I really don't want to see that day come in this country. We got to be able to work together and come together as Americans. I do feel like I've built up the Chinese threat a lot, and maybe we all have, because I mean, they are very real, but I would like to talk about some of their weaknesses, okay? You got to understand that the China of yesterday with the crazy economy, it's slowing down, all right? They have an entire generation of workers that are going to retire, and they're going to have to be taken care of by single children or only children because of their only child policy. So that's one worker taking care of 4 old people. And most people in China don't have good retirement. They don't have a good social safety net, so to speak, okay? So their economy is going to start slowing down. Their people want to have more of a consumer-based and service-based economy like us. They want blue jeans and big screen TVs, let's face it. That being said, you also have to look at a lot of their geographic weaknesses, okay? A lot of the countries around them do not want to be under the Chinese yoke. I guarantee you the Japanese don't want to. and they need to get over their Article 9 Constitution stuff, and they need to rearm, in my opinion. The Japanese have a long warrior tradition. They have a good democracy, and they got to be able to fight for it. All this hand-wringing from them, it's got to stop. You know, we're living in a different century. As far as additional weaknesses go, there are ways to counter some of these scary missiles and whatnot that they have. I can't go into it, obviously. You can go ahead and read a bunch of open source stuff. But the more complex the weapon system is and the more scary it looks on, you know, these little clickbaity YouTube videos, like China's got these super missiles that we can't stop. You know what? Every machine is defeatable, just like our machines, all right? And I guarantee you that there are very, very smart people that are working on the problem. I'll leave it at that. So China has a lot of strategic, economic, and military weaknesses, all right? They're not 10 feet tall.
Okay, so I'll jump in there, and I will point out, that's one of the first things I wanted to point out. Look, China's had a growing economy, but you just hit it, Rob, that they have an aging, they also have an aging economy and an aging population. They have a very low birth rate. Now, let's be fair, so does America. In fact, I would say America's might be worse. We really don't have good data on that. We have data, but which report is reliable? I don't know. My point here is that they have an aging population with a very low birth rate. America has an aging population with a very low birth rate. So what's the difference? I don't mean this is the end all be all. This is simply a barometer, right? One of the things you want to check, that canary in the cave mine, you know, in the cave sort of thing. One of the barometers you check of any superpower, and I'm not the only one saying this, I swear. Once again, I've never had an original thought in my head. But the point is, other really intelligent people are saying, watch their immigration, because that's how America makes up for it. We have an aging population. We have a dying population. Our young people aren't getting married till very late, if at all. I mean, the highest numbers you've ever seen and the lowest birth rates you've ever seen. The highest numbers in terms of age of first-time marriage and lowest birth numbers and birth rates you've seen. When I say the lowest, I mean the lowest since they've been keeping count, which is like the 1880s. Okay, so this may be the lowest ever in our history. It's reasonable to argue that. So the difference is that we have immigration, and we have a healthy immigration. Could it be stronger? Yes. Does it need reform? Yes. China doesn't have immigration, guys. And when you look at the Soviet Union and North Korea and Vietnam and Cuba, no one wanted to go to communist and totalitarian governments. They're not going there. They are going to America. And if you want to look at the other empires and superpowers of the history, they immigration. United Kingdom, UK was a superpower for 500 years. How long? Rome? Yeah, the Roman Empire. How long was it a superpower? Something like 900 years. Okay, so the point is that they had very, very healthy immigration. And so does America. So the problem is that, again, this is a barometer. It's not an end be all. It doesn't stop them from going to war. It doesn't stop them to going to a nuclear holocaust if they wanted to tomorrow. The point is, what they know and what they should know if they've got good advisors is we can't sustain it. We can have a very brief, short war where we have limited, objectives and gains, but we cannot sustain an all-out war because we have crappy immigration because no one wants to come here. And they don't. It's not a matter of they don't want to come here because of our poor economy. Oh no, that's a great time to invest in an economy. Poor economy. They don't want to go there because of the totalitarian government. So that's one reason right off the bat, I'm going to say, China isn't ready for a war. They're not ready for a drawn out war. Their population isn't. Doesn't matter what their government wants.
Yeah, boss. Sorry, go ahead, Les.
Now, I was going to point out, too, also militarily being ready for war. Look at the Chinese military since it's been a communist. It really hasn't performed. I mean, it took Korea to a stalemate, and it took them 1 million casualties to do it. Now, they took those casualties, but they were willing to negotiate at a certain point, so they have a casualty limit, too. The second thing you have to look is 1979, when they decided to punish the Vietnamese, and the Vietnamese pretty much handed them their ass. So the Chinese military, while quantitatively huge and quantity matters for sure, the quality level is still quite low. Yes, it's coming up, but it's still quite low. If you look at the fighters they're putting on the carriers, they're Russian jets or copies thereof. They don't have their own domestic production. And even then, it seems like they can't produce those jets in massive quantities at the rate we can produce F-18s, because it's not our ability to produce the F-18s the problem. It's our willingness to pay to produce the F-18 that's the problem. Rob, you might be better to comment on that than I could.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you bring up a good point. The Chinese do have domestic TAC air capability, and well, really just their Air Force in general, but they do rely off of some legacy stuff like the Russians. But honestly, what they do is they reverse engineer, and it may look like Russian stuff, but a lot of it's actually product improved. That being said, as far as what Doc said with the whole long war thing, I'll leave you. There's an interesting story. I was at a conference in college, and there was a Chinese professor, and we were talking this exact thing, the whole Taiwan scenario, and this was years ago. And he was doing the same thing in China, basically the same forum in China with Chinese college students. And one hothead stood up and said, why don't we just take the Spratlys and the Senkakus? We're strong now. We should be able to just take what we want. And then the professor asked him, are you going to join the military, and do you want to fight the Americans, and you want to leave home? And then he sat back down. All right. There's a willpower thing here. Okay. On top of that, as far as production levels, I mean, you can go back with force structuring and order of battle, etc. One of the things we have to realize, it's not going to be like World War II. Okay, number one, mutually assured destruction. We both have nukes. Let's just talk about that. My biggest fear is the Chinese eventually decide to pull the trigger, or some sort of flashpoint happens. A bunch of my friends die. We get smart. We kill a bunch of their people. And then one of their admirals gets mad and looses off a tactical nuke. That's my worst case scenario. Like, I fear basically escalation to a nuclear war. Like, it wouldn't stay a limited conflict. And that's why we have to be very serious about this, and we have to make sure our ROE and our allies and the UN law, let's see, all that stuff. It's not just a military problem, okay? Because we're gambling for basically the life of the earth here. On top of that, as far as a protracted war, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And honestly, it also cuts both ways. It's not like World War II, okay? The ships we had in World War II, the planes we had in World War II were great. I'm a big fan of them. They're far simpler and far cheaper and far easier to produce. We were shooting out Liberty ships like one a month. We're not going to be able to do that, all right? Our ships are far more complex. They take years to build, systems integration, tests, etc., missiles. So honestly, if we start fighting, we might end up just fighting with the inventory we have. And then there might be some sort of lull where we're all basically rebuilding missiles. It's weird thinking about that, but that might happen, okay? So again, you can make all sorts of assessments, etc., about a hot war with China, but just know that the stakes are very high. And honestly, in my opinion, I think we just have to make sure that our sword is very visible and very sharp, and we have to make smart investments in the Navy that we do have, and that we have better quality, if not better quantity. And we have to just make sure that the Chinese make that calculation. I want them to be worried about us and staying awake at night about what they would do if they actually had to fight.
Yeah. To put a fine point on what Rob said there about fighting with the inventory you have, one of the significant facts people overlook, they talk about the big shipbuilding we did in the Second World War, but of the capital ships, every aircraft carrier, every battleship that we had in the Second World War was either already built or planned to be built before Pearl Harbor. That battleships, all of them were under construction before Pearl Harbor happened. All the aircraft carriers, they had already decided to start building them before Pearl Harbor. So we only achieved a lot of that great output was simply because we already had a plan. And a lot of the casualties we could sustain ship-wise in World War II was because we had a pretty large reserve fleet that we could draw on to make up those losses in the short term while the shipyards geared up to crank out massive amounts of hulls. And we don't have that reserve fleet anymore, so that's a factor. Sorry, Brent, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're all, bud. I just wanted to ask Rob about, so obviously the Marine Corps is reorganizing. I've talked about this before. We're looking at a littoral concept. So, you know, there's no question Marines are probably going to be going amphibious, taking some islands in this fight against China, if and when it happens. What capabilities are we looking at as far as the Chinese and their retaliation to Marines taking islands in their, you know, defensive perimeter ring of islands per se? What are your thoughts on all that?
Well, if I was a Chinese admiral, I'd look at the strategic reason why I'm on the island in the first place. That's probably an airstrip. Secondarily, I can put missile batteries or radar sites there. Okay, so if the island's valuable enough, they could try and launch in a counter assault, World War II style. So you're looking at the Guadalcanal campaign, where you had U.S. Marines fighting basically Japanese Army and Navy, and we were fighting over an island for like 6 months. All right. I think the war is going to move a lot faster than that if it does happen. And I would be very worried if I was part of the forward deployed troops there, because you got to think about the vast distances in the Pacific. It takes forever to move logistics. Okay, so if it does happen, I would hope that that garrison is very well supplied and that we have a good grand strategy for why they're there in the first place, because I'd be worried about them getting cut off. All right, and I know that a bunch of Marine devil dogs would be fighting to the last magazine. But you know what? Without support, if you don't get water, you don't get resupply in your island. I mean, we did it to the Japanese. They were tough SOBs as well. We bypassed some of their islands and didn't even invade. We just surrounded them, and then they just stayed there, you know, starving. So you have to look at what the islands are for, how strategic are they, how valuable it is, and then how does it tie into the greater strategy? Because what Washington and Beijing are going to be trying to do is get their objectives without going nuclear, if that makes sense. So don't think of this as like a knockdown, drag out World War II. I think we'd make that mistake. I'm a big fan of World War II. Talk about it till I'm blue in the face. And I love that history, Navy Marine Corps history. We did amazing things. But I don't think the next war is going to look like that. But I do like the Marine capabilities. I do like that you guys are force restructuring back to what it was meant to be, that winning formula. So I definitely think we should take that heritage in the future and train to it and make sure the Chinese see us training to it. But we got to be very careful about, you know, where and when we land troops, et cetera, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm definitely glad to see that the Marine Corps is getting back in bed with the Navy. During Iraq and Afghanistan, I mean, it seems like we got in bed with the Army too much, and we lost track of our roots. So I'm glad to see that we're getting back where we belong, and that's working in conjunction with the Navy.
Yep, absolutely. And we did some pretty cool joint exercises, the Marine Corps with their HIMARS batteries, et cetera. Good stuff, good capabilities. We need to keep practicing that and honing that capability. Last live stream, you did talk about how you got rid of your tanks, and we're just going completely amphibious at this point. But like I said, it's all about resources and how long does it take for us to resupply. I mean, these distances are very vast. You're talking about thousands of nautical miles. And you're looking at weapons that move far faster and have a much longer range than the old bombers and battleship cannons, or excuse me, guns.
I'd like to ask Rob and Doc a question because I had an uncle in World War II that they ended up fighting the Japanese. It's a long story. He joined the Navy to get away from combat and ended up attached to a Marine unit and right in the middle of it. But my question is this, and I think you both kind of touched on this, but if we're in some type of island hopping campaign where we're trying to defend and or attack islands, strategic islands within the Pacific with the Chinese, what is your opinion on the average Chinese fighter's mentality versus that of the Japanese? We all know that the Japanese, it doesn't matter what side of the coin you're on, the Japanese fought hard and they fought to the death, and they would stay inside of a hole facing a flamethrower rather than come out and surrender most of the time. How do you guys view their fighting capabilities and their morale if they were forced into one of those situations, say in the next 5 years?
So I would say that the Japanese soldier is not the Chinese soldier of 2021. All right, night and day difference. They're not as motivated because honestly, China, again, no combat experience. Japan had a lot of combat experience in China beforehand. And honestly, China is a lot softer and more corrupt than the old Japanese empire was. I mean, let's be honest. You know, I've heard stories of soldiers having to bribe their lieutenants to go on leave with packs of cigarettes. I never had to see that in the U.S. military. My guys would get leave if they deserved it. You know, we did have some fraud, waste, and abuse, and some corruption in the U.S. military. I don't think it's anything compared to what we would see in China if we had clear eyes. I think there's systemic corruption and graft in their government, and there's no reason not to think that that doesn't extend to their military. As far as the average Chinese soldier goes, his motivation, I'm sure he's pretty motivated by the propaganda, etc. He loves his country, whatever. But I don't think it's going to be the same as, like you said, staying in a bunker and waiting to get flamethrowered. They're two different people. That being said, technology can be a band-aid for a lack of spirit. Okay, if there's enough of them, he's going to feel confident enough to do what he needs to do. And if he's well supplied and well equipped, well, there you go. And they do have some very highly trained special forces units. Again, a lot of them with combat experience, but they're still pretty, you know, they're still pretty well equipped, and they train a lot. They train with the Russians, they train, you know, with other countries, etc. But yeah, I can't give you an accurate assessment of their will to fight, because honestly, I think it's an individual thing. I'll tell you what, though, I wouden't want to be a Chinese paratrooper jumping over Texas. I'll say that. Brent will be there waiting for him.
Yeah, I'll give you a different spin on that. I mean, slightly. I don't know I'm that different than what Rob said, but I have a different, let's not say a different assessment so much as a different lens to put on it. And so the lens I would say is, first off, this holds true for most communist countries, but certainly, I don't need to talk about the rest of them. Let's just talk about China. China hasn't really been a massive, like on a large scale, an invader of another country in I don't know how many years. I don't know how many hundreds of years. Now think about it. You know, I mean, seriously, think about it. You're going, well, they went into Korea. They did. They were pulled into Korea. By the way, while they were the better fighter, they were also less radical and less cruel than the North Koreans. They went into Tibet at the same time, and they took it. In 1979, you know, they tried a minor invasion into Vietnam and lost. And if they were really competent in the offensive role, like invading, projecting their force to invade other militaries, they would have done it. Or, you know, in other countries, they would have done it. They would already have Taiwan. So I think, Bruce, my answer would be, if you want to look at their offensive capability, yes, in part because of their Navy, yes, in part because of their standing military, lots of reasons, their offensive history has been pretty lackluster, and I wouldn't expect any more today if they were going to on the offense. So I don't think they're coming to Texas, because I don't think they'll get to Honolulu. Now, hold on. I said offensive. What about defensive? Well, that's a whole different matter. They have a long history of a single identity called the Chinese, you know, people and the nation of China. They have a very strong national identity. They have been very successful at fighting off one invader after another over the last 100 years. And so on the defense, I don't know. They've got some terrific, you know, Spartan 300 stories of their own from defending against the Japanese invasion and several other things. So I would say that on the defense, for their own national territory, they're going to fight tooth and nail to the last man, to the last bullet. They're going to fight viciously. How capable are they as a soldier to soldier? I would say they're not as physically fit. I'd say that they're not as well equipped. I'd say they're not as well trained as an American, but I would have said that in 1998. Now, with diversity and inclusion being our highest number, you know, I'm not going to give that up. I'm not going to give it up because it isn't a one-off. People are telling us, and you just heard Rob say it, and I'm getting this from Marines and soldiers and airmen and everywhere across the board. Look, I don't go to the field to shoot my weapon system. I don't go to the field to learn to do joint operations. I go to a classroom to learn about diversity and inclusion, how not to kill myself. Please don't kill yourself. Please don't rape anybody. By the way, diversity and inclusion is a superficial, you know, paper-thin thing of what do you look like, act like, or, you know, what value set do you have. So therefore, that's diversity and inclusion. And that offends me. That offends me. And I will say that when I look at military readiness, no, our military is not ready. Our soldiers are not ready. Our Marines are not ready. Our airmen and our sailors are not ready. They're not ready to invade China. Oh, God, no. So there's that. Leaders, once again, their leadership is corrupt. Our leadership isn't corrupt. It's just weak. Our leadership is pathetic. Our leadership has no spine. Look, they don't lead. Being a leader, being a combat leader is about taking risks, all right? It's about taking risks that pay off for the strategic objective, for the tactical and then the strategic objectives. That is not what our leaders are taught. That's not what they're taught in school. They're taught to manage their careers. And this is cowardly.
Yeah.
The Chinese are not cowards. They're corrupt, but they're not cowards. And our leaders, unfortunately, are cowards. So I don't know. What are you going to say about that? It's a tough one. It's a tough one. But it's a good question, though. I appreciate it, Bruce.
So let me be that guy and throw out a what if. And hear me out here. And again, this is a what if. We're just running mental scenarios. What if China could take strategic assets in the U.S. that they need and want, such as natural resources, etc., and never have to fire a shot, and there not actually be a war per se between America and China? Would China be interested in that? I got more, but I'm curious if anybody thinks yes or no.
Well, John, I think that's what's been unfolding when I was talking about their control over all of our imports, exports, communications, technology, etc.
Okay.
I think that's already been happening for 20, 30 years. And it seems like people are sort of surprised, one, that they're like, oh crap, everything we've got is kind of made by them. And then number two, I don't think the average person really understands how their hands are involved in that. I mean, even stuff that's sensitive stuff that's dealing with our military communications, political communications, cell phones. I mean, all that stuff, man. You know, we're going into those cell phones like the president has and our higher up in leadership has, and we're having to try to get the Chinese out of those. They're in those to begin with, you know, and all the cell phone towers that we have, this live stream, everything to do with it. I'm sure YouTube, if we went back into YouTube and we said, okay, YouTube, take everything out that's made in China, there'd be no YouTube tomorrow at all. They've got their hands in everything. That's certainly that attack has happened behind the scenes without the people who really matter doing anything about it. And they've got that foothold. They've got that foothold on technology that they already need.
So let me throw this out there and go on the center, and for the rest of the internet and the chat section, if anybody loses their mind, this is a hypothetical what if. Okay, I'm not saying this is going to happen. I shouldn't have to caveat that, but it's the internet, I do. So what if we were to start getting close to, I don't know, defaulting on our debt? Who do we owe the most debt to? China. What if suddenly the power grid across large swaths of America, or the vast majority of America, just suddenly went out? Not from anything like an EMP, not from any nuclear attack, not from anything like that. Just the power goes out. It's not like China has got back doors built into all the electronic equipment and transformer and grid control systems that we have from them. Oh, wait, yes, they do. We do know that for a fact. What if China just flips out the lights one day?
Yeah.
Do you think America would go stupid? I can tell you from my firsthand experiences, America would go stupid and go stupid fast. It wouldn't be like what Brent mentioned earlier with a civil war. It would just be full on anarchy. So if like that happened, if the government says, holy crap, we need help, given, let's say, our current administration, where's the first place they'd run to? Probably the UN. We need help. rest of the world's going to say, holy crap, America's falling apart. Somebody needs to go help them because it's going to affect the rest of the world if they don't get straight. What if China just shows up at the UN and says, hey, America owes us a lot of money, but we'll tell you what, we'll be glad to come in and volunteer and help get things back under control in exchange for physical natural resources to write off some of the large debt that America owes. They could easily, hypothetically, just get invited right in. And look at the state of the nation today. There's a large chunk of our population that would welcome them, that would want them here. So theoretically, if something like that were to happen, and we can argue about how far-fetched it is or isn't, but something like that, they could get things here more than they already have, and there not even be a war between us and China. There would be no direct military conflict initially.
Well, John, you're arguing my point now. I'm trying to play devil's advocate, and I joined my side. That's part of my argument is that China doesn't need a kinetic war to achieve many of their strategic and political and economic aims, that there are other ways of doing this. As for what would America do, I suspect it would look something like, what was it, 1970 or 1972? Does anybody remember the year that the French called in all of their debt in gold? And it was so it was whatever year specifically was, look it up. But they said, hey, we want our gold and we want it now. And America had to go, oh crap. And they called it in, and to be, save face, we had to go pay France gold. This was the same time they kicked us out of their country, our military out of their country. It was the same year. What did America do? America changed the goalposts. We just said, oh, okay, well, we don't have money based in gold anymore or silver. We went to a fiat currency that same year. So what do I think would happen? Something like that. We would say, all right, well, we may owe you, but we're the ones with all the natural resources. So we'll make our own oil, and we'll create new nuclear power plants, and OPEC would lose their mind and be very upset with China, I think. I mean, it's a valid question, and it's a fun game of counterfactual analysis. And yeah, that's a real term, by the way. The what if is actually called counterfactual analysis. I think it's worth playing because you could see where this goes disastrously bad for us. So I think it's worth playing, but I think we are playing those contingencies. Our think tanks are. And my gut tells me we just move the goalpost. That's what we do.
Right, and I think that's what would happen if, let's say we defaulted right now, and or China called in debt or whatever. We'd probably do what you're saying. My wrinkle in it is, if the country is in absolute full-blown anarcho chaos from just societal breakdown that they intentionally cause with a lot of plausible deniability, because something like flipping off the power grid you'd have a hard time specifically saying, yes, they did this, because there's multiple entities that could do it and have a hard way of saying it. So if you throw in the wrinkle of the country's in full-blown chaos and the government ain't exactly functioning as normal, what then? That's when the Huns came to sack Rome. When the Huns came to sack Rome, this is very, very late, pretty much the end of the empire. Most historians point to it as the end of the empire. The Italian people, the Roman people, stood on the roadways through their villages, not defending Rome, but pointing the way for the foreign invaders. Pointing the way to Rome, because they had lost such faith with their own indigenous leadership that they were happy to see Rome sacked. And that's exactly what happened. So you're asking me, if it comes to that, will the Americans accept a new power? I think it probably any human would. A big chunk of the country would. Not all of it, but I mean, as is evident right now, a big chunk would. I mean, they're screaming for it every day. Just go look at Portland as an example.
Mind you, we're not talking about anything that's going to happen tomorrow, but I mean, you can see where American government refuses or plays this very badly, And particularly because our government is so wickedly corrupt. I mean, you can say other countries are more corrupt because they're open about their corruption, but I mean, what was the last election? That was a third world, Jiminy Christmas. What kind of circus was that? So, you know, we're getting more and more open about our corruption too.
Could I broach another topic, gents? As far as the last live stream, Brent brought up a good point. You know, as terrible and ridiculous as the war on terror has been for the past 20 years, you know, we got very good at tactical combat casualty care, very good field hospitals, very good evacuation. We've had relatively low casualties. Again, not to take anything away from what you guys have done and what the viewers have done, a lot of the viewers have done. But how would America feel about high casualty rates if we do end up going kinetic with another pure adversary? If you look back at World War II, we lost ships and we lost not just wounded, I'm talking about dead sailors, thousands at a time. Like we lost some ships and literally 1,000 people went up in the blink of an eye. You know, we had Guadalcanal, going back to that. The U.S. Navy was not the end all beat all in the early war, okay? We got our butts kicked in the first half of World War II. There were a bunch of battles where the Japanese rolled in at night, sank all of us basically, or disabled everybody, and then rolled out without a scratch. I think in the Guadalcanal campaign, something like 3 sailors died for every Marine, all right? So how would America, modern America, feel about literally truckloads, you know, by the thousands of sailors and Marines passing away in the initial battles? I'm not saying that we wouldn't eventually go back and kick some ass, because I'll guarantee you we're going to be pissed off and a bunch of my friends would go back there and make them pay for it. But you still lose those people.
No, Rob makes an incredibly good point. Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, let me just piggyback real quick on what Rob said. I'll just add to it, because this is one of my sort of theories of the problems that we have. But yes, not only how would Americans feel, the average voter, the parent, the sister feel of having thousands of casualties come back, but let's take it a step further. In World War II, they were reading about it with a black and white photo in the paper a week later. How are they going to feel about it seeing it in 4K on their cell phone later that night?
Well said, Bruce. Well said. And Rob's right, too. Those naval battles around Guadalcanal were absolutely savage. And you had a lot of fights, like the big one where the Washington took down the Hiroshima. Everybody cheers that on. But what happened in that battle, the Sodak, South Dakota, got taken out. Most of the destroyers, and I think all the cruisers in that battle, were taken out, rendered ineffective, or sunk. You know, so while, yeah, it was a big victory for us for going toe-to-toe with the battleship and winning, the truth is the U.S. Navy came out of that battle with a very big bloody nose.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The cruiser force was taken out the night before, or a few nights before, but you basically got the gist of it. We paid for that island with a lot of blood.
Yeah, so, you know, one of the commenters there, PM, wrote something to the effect of, I'll butcher his comment, but it was a good comment. He said something to the effect of that our strategic defeats over, you know, basically Beirut, what was that, 1983, Beirut on, Somalia, you know, and on and on and on. Our strategic defeats were softened by tactical and operational victories. And so, you know, our warriors could hold their heads up high. If we started massive tactical defeats, you have to immediately wonder what's our longevity when, you know, I think that gets to the look. Studies they've done historical studies on this, and they're saying, why will societies accept just unbelievably high casualty rates? And the general rule of thumb, there are many variables and many exceptions to this, but the general rule of thumb is, number one, if you think you're winning, right? If you think you're winning, if you think your cause is just, that's number two. And number three, if you think there is a pathway towards victory. then you are willing to accept incredible sacrifices. Again, if you think your cause is just, if you are winning, and if you think there is a pathway to a strategic victory. In everything we've talked about, I'm afraid at least one or two, or in some cases all three, depending on the scenario, of those items are missing. So I don't think it would be received well.
No, I appreciate the input. It makes me wonder, I'm not saying that's how the war would start if we'd allow ourselves to be that exposed, but you have to plan for any contingency, right? And you have to be realistic about your casualties.
Yeah, it's gonna be eye-opening if this war does kick off, because I mean, we haven't gone against peer threat since World War II, and I don't know, man. The American people have been conditioned, so much on low casualties, and it's gonna be eye-opening. But it might, who knows? It might have a 9/11 effect where the loss of life is so grand it actually unites the country in that effort. So time will tell.
Well, also too, remember prior to Pearl Harbor, America was very isolationist. Roosevelt was very constrained about what he could do. He very much wanted to get into the European war, and he had to just do what he could get away with, like extending the neutrality line out or doing a destroyer for bases deal and things like that. He was very limited what he could do because the American public very much did not want war, and that changed in one morning.
Hey guys,
Yeah.
Sorry. I just want to throw in, like, we can wrap this up and finish this, but I would like to dabble into the next conversation about the new mandate that came out from the latest administration. So, but we can wrap this China stuff up here with a few thoughts. Go ahead, Rob. I know you had a closing thought.
No, I appreciate you guys. Again, I was only ever a junior officer, but I obsess over stuff like this. It's not all doom and gloom, all right? I have a lot of really smart classmates, a lot of great shipmates and sailors that work for me who are really motivated. And believe me, big brains bigger than mine are working on this problem. All I would say is we got to try to stick together and write your congressman that we need, good elections, free and fair elections. Don't stop on that. I believe in that. And then also write your congressman that we need to be building good quality ships and not wasting money on bad ones. I'll leave it at that.
Doc, I know you had some.
Yeah. So I'll wrap up. My wrap up is that I'm going to stick with that we are not going to war with China. And here it comes. All right. Number one, China doesn't have a history of invading other countries on a large, projected, extended timeline. They just don't. I mean, they did 300 years ago, but not since we gave up forces. All right. And that's number one. Number two, they have a small Navy. Now, in terms of numbers, as Rob has already pointed out, they've actually superseded our Navy, which is really kind of small right now. But it's in terms of tonnage. And then, as we've mentioned time and time again, in terms of quality. So that's the other reason. I'd say number three is to remember that Taiwan itself has always been viewed as something of the Asian version of the Fulda Gap in Germany. And that is that once they cross that line, no matter who crossed that line, it was going nuclear. So that's a big consideration. Number four, China already plays a long game through the other coercions of power. Remember, let's just go with the short acronym DIME: diplomacy, information, military, and economics. Throw out the M, and they're doing just fine in diplomacy, information, and economics. So that's my number four. And number five is that America just simply is too big of a partner with China in trade. I don't think they want to break that. They certainly don't want to upset that. I think we have, yes, China can play its long game, and it's to do so, and it will achieve many of its objectives. If our objective is to bring China into something more resembling a representative government and a open society, then maybe in the long run, I don't know, China goes back to, an aristocracy and hires a king. I don't know, something like that. I just don't see it happening. Now, having said that, those are my reasons why I don't think we're going to war. Here's my question. Why are we only focused on China? Because I got a sneaking suspicion it's somebody else. And I do promise you, and I'm sorry to say this, it makes me sad. America is going to war again.
What? You mean there's other threats out there, Doc? That can't be.
I got a closing thought on this, but I want to give one of you three your thoughts before I speak. So, any of you have any on the China threat?
Nah, Doc said it pretty well.
Bruce?
No, I don't. It's a little bit out of my realm. Doc said it very well, and I'm so glad he's here because he brought so much to the conversation, a true enlightenment, and I definitely learned something from him. I know some of the viewers did. So, thanks for your input on this, Doc.
Well, like I said, I can be wrong, and Rob has put up a pretty good argument why they would want to. And like I'll reiterate what I said, an hour ago, and that is, if I were China and I made up my mind that I am going to war, now is the time. I won't deny that.
Yeah.
John?
I think everybody else pretty much said it.
All right, so I just want to give my little 2 cents to wrap up this whole China deal, and I want to speak directly to the NCOs of I guess all the services, but particularly Marine and Army infantry. If you are training, if you are going to the field and you are training your soldiers and Marines, you need to train them to fight against a peer threat. Far too long, we have let our Marines and soldiers go up against OPFOR with, lesser capabilities. We had guys in man dresses and, rubber AKs were our OPFOR. We need to conduct force-on-force training against peer threats. Yes, your opponent has MVG capabilities. Yes, your opponent has thermal capabilities. If you are not training to your men, your soldiers, your Marines to that standard, you are failing them. Although I see, Doc Larsen's point, and I know he's trying to be devil's advocate, I'm a proponent of, regardless of whether we're going to go to war or not, we need to train for this because I believe it's probably going to happen. And in my opinion, China is going to be the next big conflict. I think it might be limited in scale. I do not foresee Marines having to hit the beach of mainland China, but I do believe that we are going to be hitting the beaches somewhere. And hopefully, it cooler heads prevail and it doesn't become nuclear. But I do think we, as infantrymen, need to prepare to fight that peer threat, and that goes for everything: Navy sailors, Marine infantry, Marine, you name it. I mean, soldiers, tankers, whatever the case may be. You need to prepare to fight against peer threats. And hell, I'll even go as far as the civilians back here in the States. Be ready, because although it might seem far-fetched, hell, Chinese paratroopers could fall from the sky. You never know. So anyways, that's my rant. I'm going to jump off that, and we're going to segue into the next conversation here, and that's going to be over the current administration's vaccine mandate. And I know some of my other peers in here are going to take over that conversation more than I will. So I'm going to kick it off and turn it over to you guys. Let's have at it. We've already been going at this for about an hour and a half, so let's kick this off. Who wants to take this first?
All right, I'll jump on the grenade. This is a personal decision, and it's a tough one because, everybody has to make their own decision. Do you have the right to control what's in your body? Absolutely. But another person has freedom too. you know, they have the right to not go into a grocery store full of infected people. That being said, coronavirus is far less deadly than polio and the mumps. So I don't know if we need to go to the level of vaccination that we have for those diseases, where your kid basically can't go to school if they haven't been vaccinated for polio, measles, and whatnot. This is becoming a dividing line in our country, and it scares the hell out of me, because you're already seeing people attacking people. Like, there was a thing in the news, a guy attacked the manager of a bank because the bank manager asked him to put on a mask. And you have both sides being like that, you know, just getting violent over disagreements about a piece of cloth. And it's really, you know, I can't say it doesn't make sense, because we've reached the point where nobody wants it to make sense. Everybody has so much entrenched into their views. Not only can they not see the other guy's point of view, they don't want to see the other guy's point of view. And with that, I'll turn it over to the next guy.
It's a good point. Real good point there, Les. I deal with it every day, every single day. And I was one of the very first ones to start wearing a mask. I was initially a firm believer that, you know, that it would make a difference. I don't feel that way anymore. That's just my personal opinion based on everything that I've seen over the last couple of years. I've been really disappointed in our leadership. And you know, you got the politics of it. You've got Biden, you've got Nancy Pelosi, and I mean, I know those two names make most of the viewers here just absolutely cringe, and me too. But, you know, it was just a couple months ago they were saying, hey, we'll never have a national vaccine mandate. And all of a sudden now they flip-flopped on that. Now, I'm not necessarily surprised that they flip-flopped, but to flip-flop on it and then to somehow try to state that we're following the science, that's crazy. It's crazy. There's so much. I could spend hours here talking about issues that I have with the way that things have unfolded during this pandemic. But for I think that we've received so much bad information, and it's so political now. And it really seems that now with Biden, with him forcing this employer mandate through OSHA, that it's purely political. It's purely, I'm going to make those of you who don't trust me do something to your body that you don't want to do. And I think that if his goal was to try to convince people that they should go out and get the vaccine, he's completely missed the mark. I'm also disappointed in seeing that we aren't talking about natural immunization because so many, I think it's almost 300 million people around the world, that's a rough number, but have survived the COVID-19 virus. Well, they've got natural immunity. Now, how long do they have natural immunity? Look, there's a lot of tests that are out there. The Israelis are looking at it. They've came up with some determinations. The French have decided that they're going to recognize natural immunity. But natural immunity is something that everybody would recognize 3 years ago. This wasn't even up for debate. And all of a sudden now they won't even talk about it. No one in the media is talking about it. No one anywhere is even considering discussing the fact that you have all of these people who at some point had the virus and have recovered from it. I had the virus. I had absolutely zero symptoms when I had it. I would have never known that I had it if I hadn't have went and got tested because my fiance ended up having it. But I never would have known. How many people are out there that never would have even known that they had it? So the question becomes, well, I understand some people have it, and some people go to the hospital, and some people get really sick from it. But there's a lot of people that don't. And I think that just to minimize those people and just to force everyone under this big umbrella, this one solution fits all, everybody go get vaccinated. You have to go get vaccinated, being compelled to by your government. Man, I don't know that I would have ever thought I would have seen that through our government. And even a few months ago, I don't think that Joe Biden or Nancy Pelosi even fathomed that they would be able to get away with it. But here we are. And I think that this is going to be a big issue. This may be something that our grandkids talk about. This could end up being a big deal.
All right. So let me first just full disclosure. I have my father-in-law lives with us. He's almost 80 years old. My oldest daughter was born with lots of complications, and her lungs are compromised. So that's two of the 5 people that live in my household. And so I was very pleasantly and very much willing to get double vaccinated. And when that became available to my family in February and March of this year, we got vaccinated, double vaccinated. We wore masks, we isolated, because I have 2 vulnerable people in my household. That made sense to me. And it was a decision we made for our family. I think, and I'm going to advocate that we need to respect everyone's decision. And that includes if they don't want to vaccinate, don't want to wear a mask, and don't want to social distance. That's their decision, and it's one that I respect. I will tell you that for me, lethality is not the issue. I'm seeing all this on it's this lethal, it's that lethal. I don't care. AIDS is lethal. Autoimmune deficiency syndrome is lethal. AIDS. In 1980s, AIDS came out, and the victims of this just horrible disease were pariahs in society. We were terrified of them. And maybe there's something human that we can say, yeah, guys, we were all scared. If you lived through that, you know it. We were all scared. It was terrifying. But we pariahed, and I'm not trying to justify it. It was terrible, but we pariahed the victims. That's not what's going on today. There's something far more sinister that's going on today. Today, it's not about who's the victims of COVID. It's that you must bow to my convictions. You must bow to my convictions. And if you don't bow to my convictions, you're less of a human being. You're less deserving as a human being. So that really upsets me. As a moral person, as a Christian, as a Roman Catholic, that deeply disturbs me. It reminds me of 1930s Germany and everything I've read about that. There are 4 steps. I love my list. There are 4 steps. Very first thing you need to do is whoever you want to make the scapegoat. Let's talk about the Jews. First thing you need to do is you need to make them less human and less deserving than the rest of us human. Well, let's put blame on them, and let's make sure that through that blame, we degrade their status in society as less human and less deserving. Number 2, we need to take economic sanctions against them. We must damage them. Are you thinking about Kristallnacht? Well, because today we're saying you can't be hired. It wasn't just Kristallnacht. You could go to parks and they said, Jews not allowed. Jews can't come into this business. And if you're doing business with Jews, we're going to take pictures of you and put your pictures up on the town hall. That was 1930s Germany. And it's starting to sound like 2021 America. So the second thing is economic sanctions. Then the third thing, you need to isolate them. You physically isolate them in camps, in ghettos, say something like Australia today. The fourth thing, of course, is the final solution, isn't it? It's extermination. I'm not doing it, guys. I'm fully vaccinated. I mask up. I social distance. I isolate when necessary. And I will stand with anyone who disagrees with that. No. I'm inside the system. I have that privilege. I'm standing up against this. No. Non-vax are not less human, and they're not less of an American citizen. And I encourage everybody to stand with them.
Thank you for that, Doc. I'm with you. I agree with you.
Yeah, I got nothing left after that.
Can I say one thing real quick, guys? Just I've got it. There's a guy that I work with that he's kind of super pro-vax, and he's like, hey, more than 50% of the population have become vaccinated. Therefore, we have a mandate. We can force that other 49% or whatever it is to do what we want them to do because majority rules. This is his newest argument. Here's the thing that I want everyone here to remember, and I think that maybe we can all agree on this. This country is different from other countries. When this country was founded, every one of those men who put their signature on the Declaration of Independence, every one of them had a death sentence. They were going to die, and their families were probably going to be jailed. They went up against the greatest military in the world at the time. And there was no way in hell that they were going to come out of it alive. They were men of conviction, and they decided that we believe in this idea of a free country. We believe in liberty so much that we're willing to be hanged in front of everybody. And we probably will be, simply by signing this piece of paper saying that we support this idea of liberty over life. If give me liberty or give me death, how many states have adopted that? How many times have we heard it? It's been said throughout history, and it's just that. If I'm not going to be free, I don't want to continue my life on this planet. That's how this country was founded. And if we think about that today, whether you're pro-vax, anti-vax, somewhere in the middle, that doesn't matter. The freedom of the small man, the liberty of the small man to make that choice, the liberty of the woman to make that choice. I've got a lady that I work with who's like 6 months pregnant. Okay. She went to her physician who she trusts, and a physician says, hold off. Let's not do a vaccination. Let's wait till you have the kid. I bet there's thousands, tens of thousands of pregnant women around the country whose doctors are telling them the same thing. This is just one example. Now, why are they going to lose their job? Why are they going to be penalized? Because they're following their pediatrician's recommendation, their doctor's recommendation on what they should do to raise a healthy child. I have a problem with that. Whether you're pro or anti-vaccine, doesn't matter. I have a problem with that. And you're absolutely right, Doc, that this country is different, and we need to stand up for those people's opinions, those people's views. Americans have the right to make stupid choices. They do it all the time. I jumped out of an airplane like 16 times trying to get some stupid skydiving license. People do stupid stuff. It's okay to be an American and do something stupid and die from it. And we should all stand up for that right, because otherwise there's no difference between us and any other country that's out there.
Amen, Bruce. And
all right, I'm going to get off my soapbox because I'm starting to feel like John over at UW Gear now.
What you got, Rob?
Hey, amen, guys. I just want to add, one of my biggest pet peeves about this whole pandemic, being told by morbidly obese people that I need to lift my mask up or to follow whatever bullshit protocol. Like, look, man, I believe in the vaccine. I don't believe in forcing people to. I don't know why I deployed, overseas, and my friends deployed overseas just so we could come back and have people be told what to do with their bodies. I don't agree with it. I'm all into the freedom. If you're worried about your health, then get vaccinated and wear 2 masks, or just don't leave the house. We're all free to do that. No one's hurting you. And honestly, if this was really about health, we would be encouraging Americans to stop being so fucking fat. Let's just be honest. All right. Get off the couch, go run outside, breathe the air. I guarantee you're not going to get COVID from jogging in the woods or whatever. All right, drink some water and stop eating so much goddamn sugar. The morbidly obese people are the ones that are dying from this disease, and I definitely feel for them. But you got to look at yourself honestly and get yourself ready. Like I'm in the Joe Rogan camp. You may not even need the vaccine if you're just really healthy. Just be a beast. Go out there. It feels good. You're going to be mentally better. You're going to be better at your job. You're going to look better. You're going to have confidence. Just get off the couch and lose some weight. And also for all the tactically minded in the crowd, physical fitness is right up there. There's a lot of people on YouTube that have a lot of cool gear and can shoot really fast and have the little shot timer. They could not run a mile in that gear without dying. I'll just leave it at that.
That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm. And that was fantastic, Rob. Thanks for diving in on that. So, I came down with COVID. And honestly, I had 2 days of body aches and some, fatigue, and that was about it. And it did not really take me out of the fight very long. And I ended up getting the vaccine. I waited for a while because, I had the antibodies and whatnot. And I ended up getting it, honestly, just because I didn't want to wear a damn mask when I was, on at Marine Reserve training. And for a while, they had that policy. If you got vaccinated, you have to wear a damn mask. and I literally got the vaccine just so I didn't have to wear a damn mask. And then 2 days after I get the damn vaccine, the FDA or CDC, changes their guidelines and says everybody's got to wear a mask. So what do you think the Marine Corps does? But in any event, everybody knows, yes, it's real. Absolutely. You know the risks. If you don't want to get vaccinated, you shouldn't have to. Nobody should be forcing you. Everybody knows the risks. Okay. If you don't trust the vaccine, you shouldn't have to get it. But at the same time, if you end up getting sick and God forbid die, that's on you, man. Mm-hmm. So, for the life of me, I don't understand how a government entity thinks it can push vaccines on the civilian public. Now, military, hey, you're shit out of luck, man. You're going to get whatever they prescribe to you. I got 6 anthrax vaccines. All right. When I saw my medical, I changed units not too long ago, and I saw my medical record, which is the size of a phone book, and I didn't even recognize 3/4 the shit on my shot record. So your military, hey, you enlisted, man. You signed a contract, so you don't have a choice. But civilian populace, man, I cannot fathom for 1 second how a federal government gets away with mandating a vaccine. Next.
I'll throw an interesting idea out there, something that I've been sort of thinking about, and this is something for all you guys to think about. And I'll use some kind of trendy buzzwords that are out in the mainstream media, right? But think about this. What does the vaccine do? The vaccine, they say, keeps you from being hospitalized and from suffering from serious illness. And I actually believe that is the case. I think that is true for 99.9% of the people that have taken the vaccine. What does it also do? It cuts down on just throughout the board. Not only does it keep you from being hospitalized, but it cuts down on your symptoms. It allows you to fight it off more easily, just like natural immunity would if you were to get it a second time. But here's the problem. So I know that it wasn't that long ago, the president said, hey, if you want to get rid of the mask, get the vaccine. And there are a lot of people that bought into that. Brent's a perfect example of that. He said the same thing. He's, I get the vaccine, I can get rid of this stupid mask, and I can carry on with my life, get things back to normal. That's really all almost everyone wants. It's just to get life back to normal and get out of this, right? But here's the thing. If you are not showing heavy symptoms and you're aware that this is going on around you, if you do get sick and you start having headaches, fever, body aches, what are you going to do? Most responsible people are going to stay at home. They're going to get tested. They're going to find out, oh shit, I got it. And then they're going to make plans to deal with it. And they're not going to expose themselves to other people. I know dozens of family members, friends that have went through that, and that's what happens with most American families. But if you're not showing those symptoms and you're out with the vaccine thinking that I've got the vaccine, I can't get it, even if you do feel some symptoms, you're saying to yourself, I've got the vaccine, it can't possibly be coronavirus. Now you are infecting other people that you're around because you're not social distancing, you're not wearing a mask, you're not taking those precautions because you aren't showing the symptoms of it because you've got the vaccine that minimizes those symptoms for you. Are you the new super spreader? You have to ask yourself that question, right? It's just a different way of thinking about it outside of the box. But I'm kind of wondering, how many of those, I see his comments all the time on the internet, reading news articles. I'll go to YouTube, I'll watch a news article, I'll look at the comments. I can't help myself. The comments, that's where it's at. That's the Jerry Springer of the world, right? I've got to see what people are saying. There's so many people saying, oh, I got the vaccine, I can't get it. And no, that's not true. You absolutely can get it. It's just going to minimize the time at which you suffer from it. But that can be dangerous because then you can infect other people with it. And if you're of the belief that you can't get it because you have the vaccine, you're now spreading that to other people who may or may not be vaccinated.
One of the more interesting news, media articles that I've watched last week was, I'm trying to remember who it was. It was on YouTube, among other places. And basically it was this. It was a medical think tank that put out this 8-minute video saying, hey, there are repercussions to having kicked the flu's butt last year. In the flu season last year, because we were so in tune with social distancing and all this other stuff, we significantly limited the spread of influenza, so the flu. And this is a good thing. And they were saying, look how good this is. They said, however, we don't know the long-term impact of that. And I thought, whoa, hold on, what? Where's this going? And they were very forthcoming, saying, look, we've got a multi-tiered, highly complex, like global, we share with something like 60 other nations around the world, all of our data, and they share theirs. What strand of the flu did you get? How were you able to beat it? This is the strand of the flu that we got, or the 3 strands of the flu that we got. Here's how we were able to beat it. And there was the shared information and technology and growth and expansion of our medical capabilities. And they said, this video was saying, we didn't do that last year. So we're reasonably confident that we're going to be able to address the flu season this coming year. But it does raise kind of a yellow flag up the flagpole that says, hey, are we missing the opportunity to make sure we are offsetting the next swine flu, China flu that takes out, what was the flu there right during World War I that killed more people than World War I? Which one was that?
Spanish flu?
Spanish flu.
Spanish flu.
That's right. And the Chinese flu, the China flu in the late 1960s that killed 1 million people worldwide. Now, you got that's more than the entire Vietnam War, dude. And it was one flu season with the China flu that killed over 1 million people globally. So you've got these things. And they were raising the question that, hey, it's good to get on top of this, but it sure was disruptive to our health system, the way that this multi-tiered global health system in defeating the flu, and we're not sure what the long-term ramifications of that are. So this is starting to sound like my Chinese argument. Yeah, it's not the Chinese we need to worry about, it's the guys we're not looking at. And I kind of feel like that's what it is about COVID too. COVID didn't turn out to be the big boogeyman that everybody pretended it was. It's a serious thing and it killed people, and that's tragic. But my question is, what are we not paying attention to now that we're all looking at COVID?
John?
I'm hesitant. This is one of those things that, I'll be honest, I get pretty dug in on. Like, I've had numerous family and friends that have gotten it. They've gotten sick, gotten over it, they were fine. I know people who are fully vaccinated and have family members that were fully vaccinated, got sick after they got vaccinated, and got seriously hospitalized. Numbers that I've seen from some of my friends who are active practicing medical people are that now, about a year into this, from the vaccination point, the numbers are shifting and we're seeing more and more people hospitalized that are vaccinated than unvaccinated. It varies from area to area. So my thing comes down to this. I don't care if you've got the vaccine. I don't care if you want to wear a mask. I don't care if you socially distance. In fact, I'd prefer you did socially distance. I don't like people up in my space. I've been known to be that guy standing in a checkout line and can feel you breathing down my neck and will just randomly turn around to point at something and elbow you in the face and, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know you were there. Meanwhile, you've got blood coming out your lip. That works. I can have plausible deniability. I digress. Social distancing is fine with me. Where I draw the line at is with you telling me I have to get it and that you are going to penalize me if I don't get it. I have family members that can't get it. It's not recommended that my wife get it. I've got a family member of a family member right now in the process of losing their job because they got the first round, and the first round put them in ICU for over 2 weeks, almost killed them. They cannot take the second. Their employer has said, you must have it or you don't work here. Then you have the President of the United States basically come out and openly pit a large, potentially half the country's population against the other half. An open sitting president. You have him feed into that division. You threaten me directly, and I'm sorry, he didn't call me by name, but he was looking at me when he said it. I took it personal. You openly threaten the sitting governors of multiple states that you're going to get them out of the way with your presidential power. Well, here's a clue. The states were always intended to have more power than the federal government. The federal government was supposed to be very small and relatively impotent for the most part. But when you start pulling that crap and telling me I have to, and you want to start putting a division between me and other people in the population, you are openly fomenting violence. There's already enough people that believe, because I haven't gotten the vaccination, that I should be denied medical care, locked up in a camp, fined, put in jail, physically assaulted, whatever. And my thoughts when it comes to that is make real sure that's a hill you want to die on, in forcing me or my loved ones or anyone else to take something we don't want, because it very well may be the one that I'm willing to die on. So,
You know, John, I think you and your family should, John, I think you and your family should just start wearing your Star of David, and the rest of us better be prepared to present our papers.
Well, good luck with that. Once again, I hope that's a hill that people are willing to die on.
Well, I'm serious. I was just talking to a couple of colleagues this last weekend who are in my sort of situation. They're inside working for government, different government agencies, completely different government agencies. And they were saying they're having a moral issue now. They're having a moral struggle, and it's deeply personal, and saying, what do I do when I disagree, even though I'm one that got vaccinated, even though I'm one that masked and all this stuff, what do I do? And I said, kind of off the cuff, but I'm beginning to think more and more. I said, well, I guess what we need to do is also Star of David's to our masks. And I'll write the word non-vac across it just to let people know, oh, I'm vaccinated. I'm standing with the other people. Maybe we all need to get Star of David and start publicly wearing that.
Well, another thing to consider here. Oh, sorry, John, go ahead.
You say that, but one of my buddies, who again is practicing medical professional, actually had a patient agree with that and say with that. He actually felt like that was what we should start doing. So it's out there in the public mindset.
Good, let's do it. I'll wear it to show solidarity, even though I'm vaccinated. I'll wear it. I'll wear it on my mask, and I'll wear it to the federal government employment where I work. I'm abiding by everything. I'm going to show that I stand in solidarity with the non-vac people. I stand in solidarity with the American people.
Yeah, see, I'm not going to do it at all. So,
well, if you got to think of, go ahead, Les.
I was going to say, here's the thing that look at some recent history. In 2014, a group of people out in Nevada were willing to go to the war of the government over cows. You know, there's a whole lot more angry people now. And, you know, one of the things, if you talk to any insurgency expert, one of the things that defeats insurgency is employment. Right now, you have an awful lot of unemployed people in this country because it's convenient to be unemployed. People with time on their hands become very dangerous people.
Yeah, I was just going to tie this back into China. If I'm the king of China, I'm sitting back with my feet up. I'm drinking my whatever it is, alcohol that the Chinese drink, and I'm just laughing at the division that I've managed to create within America. Not only have I killed a whole bunch of Americans, I've got those that have survived 50% fighting against the other 50% and created complete turmoil within the country without having ever to fire a shot. So think about it through those lenses.
Yeah, I want to dive in real quick too. Chinese are sending like hundreds of thousands of vaccines to Vietnam to try to win them over also, because we've seen, this kind of ties back into our China brief that we were doing earlier. We've seen that the Vietnam has become more cozy with us, right? And that obviously pisses off the CHICOMs, because the Vietnam and the Chinese have had, back and forth disputes over the South China Sea. And that's one of the ways they're trying to get the upper hand, is they're sending in all these vaccines for the freaking virus that started in their country. So,
if I could add, it is rather Orwellian. And going back to what you said, Bruce, Mao Zedong let the Japanese and the nationalist Chinese fight it out and bleed each other dry before he started actually launching his offensives. Something like 9 out of 10 Chinese soldiers that fought the Japanese were actually the nationalists. The Chinese propaganda would have you believe that was the opposite ratio. But basically, they just waited for them to fight each other out, and then they picked on the weaker party and won. Additionally, as far as the going back to your population that has a lot of time on their hands, China also has that. Let's not forget that they have a huge amount of their male population that have no ability to have wives because of the one China policy and their abortions and their prejudice against baby girls, unfortunately. Yeah. So they have that big problem to deal with. And a lot more of their population is closer to the poverty line than ours is. But then again, they also control the government, the media, social media. There's no gun ownership, and they can arrest you at will. And they have a social credit system. So they got that going for them.
So 2 things, jumping back to one, something I saw in the comments a while ago. Here's the deal. If the vaccine works, me not having it is not doing anything to you. That's never been the case with any vaccine ever. If you were vaccinated and it works, being around unvaccinated doesn't have any protocol. So somebody said earlier that the problem with the unvaccinated is it affects them. No, it doesn't. In fact, right now, it's already starting to be documented that most of these mutated versions are coming from the vaccinated people. So vaccinated people are doing more as far as spreading it, because you can still spread it, still get it, etc., than the unvaccinated are. Me being unvaccinated, though, if it works, does not harm you at all. Secondly, the other thing I don't think a lot of people are looking at is with these mandates and the vision that's potentially coming, and I know this from folks I've already talked to that it's happening to them, you could potentially see some serious nationwide supply issues fixing to happen, because there are already people who are quitting their jobs up front. Like there was just an article I read today that was sent out in a major publication. One hospital in New York has had to basically suspend their maternity ward because of nurses and doctors quitting. I've also seen other places where, for example, in the trucking industry, there's a lot of people in the trucking industry that don't want it. And there are already places of large distribution centers where truck drivers go in and out of that, due to the company policy that owns the distribution center, everybody on the premises has to be vaccinated, and they are having truck drivers show up that they're saying, we can't let you on the premises unless you can show proof of vaccination. So the truck drivers are having to turn around and find a spot and pull over and get on the phone and say, what do I do? If the mandates and stuff go through, the executive order as laid out is allowed to go, it has already solidified a lot of people's opinions that might have been on the fence, might not have been on the fence. They're no longer on the fence or even a question. there's a lot of people that it's either put them on this side or this side, and people are saying, nope, I'm not going to at all. But those that don't, the jobs that they typically work in, you could start seeing national implications of issues as one example of problems. Again, some of my medical friends are prepared and preparing to quit their jobs and take early retirement over this. We could see the medical industry decimated. All kind of industry decimated.
And that's a valid point, John. I tell you what, we don't have to hold this for like next week or the next week whenever Brent wants to start tackling this. But for me, that's been one of the things that I've been fascinated over these last, 2 years of COVID is going back and looking at the impetus of what created the two dark ages that are, there have been other minor ones, but the two major dark ages that happened to human history. And now most people know, well, the fall of the Roman Empire ushered in, the dark ages of Europe and all of this. Yeah. Well, there was another one that was at least as big and at least as important. It was called the end of the Bronze Age. You remember the sea people that, quote unquote, that attacked. So, but there are things when you have such strong interconnectivity, and that's what that we have in common with those, is that we have such strong interconnectivity with trade and information and all of this stuff, that when diseases and then famine and other sort of disasters, the four horsemen, right, when they started occurring, it started falling like dominoes. And now we know that we this is well studied. And so the dark ages ushered in during, right after the Bronze Age, lasted, I want to say 600 years, 600 to 800 years. And most people put the dark ages after the Roman Empire about the same. And the only reason maybe the plague didn't have that effect is because we had not yet created the interconnectivity that the other two human histories, periods of human history had. We certainly have that today. And I think we have to keep an eye on this ball. Now, I open that can of worms. Brent, I'll back off and go, let's talk about this another time. I mean, it's only the dark ages and the end of humanity that we're talking about. Surely it can wait.
Yeah, let's so we're at 2 hours and 11 minutes. I think we should probably start wrapping up, folks. I know we can talk about this for hours, but let's go around the horn. I'll go last. Final thoughts, and what do you got coming on your social media, your YouTube, your Instagram, whatever the case may be. Let's kick it over to Pegasus Test.
Well, I think tonight's conversation proves that interesting times approach, to say the least. As far as what I've got going on social media-wise, of course, over on my YouTube channel, just finishing up some coverage of the 2021 Two-Gun Luau, and we're going to be posting some videos soon about some different tests. We recently, due to viewer request, did a video on British snap shooting, and it turned out to be pretty popular. And one of the big requests that came out of that video in the comments section was people wanted to see it done in low light. So recently we just did that all under NODS conditions and got some extremely interesting results. So as soon as I can get that video patched together, I'll get that posted up, and I've got more gear reviews coming. Over to you, Bruce.
All right, so I'm not going to discuss my social media updates because I probably am not going to have any, and I'm going to use my time for this. I got 2 points. One, let's think about that vaccine mandate that they're forcing on employers. One of the big differences in this mandate than other mandates, if you look at like Trump's ban on bump stocks, if you look at like Clinton's ban on assault weapons, is that once those are deemed to be unconstitutional and are reversed, then those sort of no harm, no foul, those things start rolling back in. You can have them again. If you're that mother that's 5 months pregnant and your employer requires you to get a vaccine mandate, even though your doctor tells you not to, by the time that it's goes through the constitutional process and is found to be unconstitutional, you can't take that vaccine out of the mother. You can't take that vaccine out of the child. So what recourse do you have? It's almost like a way that Biden is seeing to circumvent this whole free will of anybody, because once you've got the jab, you've got the jab. There's never any reversing it. Something else, and this is very important, I want to point out to you guys, so pay attention. There was a comment here below where a guy asked, Brent, you look like a stud. What's your secret? So I'm going to kick it back over to Brent, and he's going to tell you how he looks like such a stud every time he's on the camera before you.
That's not fair. I told you I'm going last. So,
all right, don't forget, we want to know your stud secrets, man.
Let's kick it over to Doc. Doc, you go.
All right. I'm one of those people that says, hey, how about we give this thing called liberty a try? I mean, why not? What's the worst that could happen? We all just, live freely. And so that's my answer to Hank McGurk, who's been, prodding me along saying, all right, Doc, you're the guy with the ideas. How are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? And I say to that, Hank, sincerely, you just need to find a way, vote, democracy, a coup d'etat. You just need to find a way to reinstate me as the Holy Roman Emperor. And I'm exactly the kind of guy that you want to be the emperor, because I have such libertarian principles. That old meme, libertarians, they want to take over the universe and then leave you alone. So that's how we do it. Let's give liberty a try.
Hearing Doc talk about being the emperor kind of makes me want to find my shovel, because it's getting kind of deep. But, because emperors always work out so well, as much as I like him. What have I got coming up? Let's see. Got a little arts and crafts project I'm working on. I'm getting close to finishing that. Got a new rifle build, hopefully be showing off soon. Got some more gear stuff in the works. Oh, got a couple of new water filters that I'm trying out. Doing it for real myself, so you can tune in to find out if I have to spend lots of time hugging the porcelain throne because of it. Got some stuff I might be doing with my youngest son. I'm trying to get worked out once we get a few things finished. Got all kind of stuff in the works. Just, again, I'm so busy tied up with work and trying to get gear made and orders shipped that I don't have as much free time to get all the other stuff that I want to get done as what I want. So other than that, that's about it.
Thanks for y'all's time. Appreciate it. I don't have any public social media, just a concerned citizen. But I really appreciate y'all's channel and letting me say my little bit here. Don't let them censor you. Make sure you guys and gals always support freedom and freedom of speech. It's the only thing that keeps us different from the Chinese, honestly. It's not our money, our power. It's the freedom and the Constitution, all right? So don't ever give that up. As far as shout outs, I'd like to shout out the Gary Sinise Foundation. I personally know somebody who's lost both legs in Afghanistan. They built him a house. Also, a shout out to the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society. I've had a lot of sailors and known some Marines as well that have gotten a lot of help out of that charity. I mean, these are young kids. They don't know how to be financially stable yet. Some of them came from bad homes, but you know what? They answered the call. They're serving, and they're out there right now. And these charities definitely help them. Thank you.
Hey, man, I gotta say, Rob, hey, you've been absolutely awesome coming on here. And I didn't even know Rob. He actually just reached out to me on Instagram, sent me a message, and I had some correspondence with him back and forth. I took a chance because he just seemed like a wealth of knowledge just through the small number of messages I was going back and forth with him. And man, what you brought to this conversation today is irreplaceable. I mean, it was great, man. I really appreciate you coming on, and a big thank you from me. And I know the rest of the guys feel the same on this panel. So,
no worries. Thank you.
Yeah, man, 100%. Thank you very much. As far as me, what I got coming down the pipe, as far as social media concerned, YouTube, My buddy Ken went down there, who's Taiwanese, I might add. So, another little China tie-in here. But Ken and I went to a primary arms range event recently and shot a bunch of fully automatic weapons. It was closed to the public. It was kind of an insider thing. It was industry people and some YouTube personalities. Thought it'd be fun. It was down in Houston, so it was kind of a hike for me, but it was absolutely 100% awesome. We went down there and just a whole bunch of full autos, got to shoot that. So I got some footage from that. I've been posting a few clips on my Instagram that you guys can check out if you're interested in that. But I will be putting up a video on my YouTube channel very shortly. I'll probably work on it tomorrow. I'll probably release it sometime on Friday, perhaps. But just highlighting that. It was a really good opportunity to go see that stuff. So I got One Shepherd coming up at the end of the month. So very much looking forward to that. For the first time ever, we're going to be teaching a class over the light support weapon, which is kind of the automatic rifleman of One Shepherd. And I'll be teaching the very first class on that. So I'm honored to do that. I was kind of weighing the possibility of doing an infantryman's guide over the automatic rifleman. And I don't know if I'll be able to get that done before I go to One Shepherd, but that is also something that I'm looking at put on the blotter to check out and do. So a couple things in my head for future videos coming down the pipe. But other than that, guys, I think this has been a unbelievably successful stream tonight. I noticed that we had essentially over 200 viewers for the better part of 2 hours. And that's high, much higher than what we had last week. So this has really gained some steam. And I think the people that we've brought on here have contributed so much, and it's just been a great experience. So I really appreciate all you guys throwing in the fight here. This has been amazing. So that's pretty much all I got. But any last parting words, guys?
I just say for those viewers and those commenters, I know that we've had, much like this country is divided, we've got opinions from both sides of the vaccine, the COVID whole opinion on this. But hey, just the fact that you're here, we're all on the same team. And I respect all of your opinions, whether you're pro, anti, or somewhere in between like I am. And thanks for being here. And just remember that who the real enemy is. It's not those of us that are viewing and those of us that are commenting.
Yeah, 100%. All right, guys. Well, we're going to end this. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Don't forget to leave a comment. And thanks for watching.